Quick one. If you'd like to support us on our journey to 1,000, please do consider subscribing or following this podcast, wherever it is you listen to this. Thank you.
Yeah, you do. We have to speak up. We have to. Some people think, oh, I don't want to be too flash. I don't want to be too arrogant. Well, you ain't gonna get nowhere. So you have to speak up and tell people what about what you're working and what you're doing. That's just part of life. People who are successful don't become successful by just putting their head down and doing the work. That's just not. It doesn't work like that.
Vanessa Sanyauke is the founder of Girls Talk London, an organisation she founded to increase female representation in global organisations and to equip women with the skill set that they need to thrive in their careers.
And I think also it's around just men stepping up. It's men in the workplace actually thinking, if you have a child with someone, it's got to start with you. Is the childcare 50-50? Are you helping clean up the house? How are you helping the mother of your child's career thrive? I think there's a lot of work to be done around how men can support the mothers of their kids, because the data shows women are still doing majority of the childcare, and they're not making babies on their own, is all I'll say. So it's a lot of barriers. And so I kind of, firsthand saw that there was a problem. Young girls were not aspiring for careers in the financial services and in tech. So I thought, something needs to be done about that. But also the data is showing that that's true, because no wonder they don't feel that there's a place for them. There's no women who are leading these companies. At that time, I think there were only like 6 female CEOs of the top 100 companies in the UK. I don't believe that's increased much. It kind of fluctuates between 6 and 7. So, that was really my motivation for starting that. I wanted to give young women accessible role models, but I also wanted to help women progress in their careers as
well. Thank you for coming to 1,000 Voices, Vanessa. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really excited about our conversation. I'm really good. Excited.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm really excited actually to have you on here as well. I love the work you do with Girls Talk London, like proper love it. When I was looking over everything you guys are about, like love it.
Yeah.
And was super excited to get you on here. So yeah, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So before we begin, could you just, for people who don't know who you are, could you just give us like a very quick, short introduction to yourself and what you do?
Yes, so my name is Vanessa Sanyauke. I am the CEO and founder of Girls Talk London. So what we do, we connect women in 37 countries with global businesses, and we are all about helping women level up in their career, but access jobs and opportunities. I am also a diversity and inclusion professional. I've worked in diversity and inclusion for over 15 years. I've worked in the financial services. I've worked at UK Parliament and sort of leading global D&I strategy as well. And that's a bit about me. And I also have a podcast as well. I'm a podcaster. I've got a business podcast called the After Work Drinks Club. It was in the top 10 UK business charts, where we interview inspirational and influential people over a nice cocktail or two. And yes, that's a bit about me.
Yeah, the podcast is amazing. I've listened to a few episodes. I listened to the Kalechi one. I listened to the Natalie one. Yeah. I listened to maybe 1 or 2 others. I can't remember, but amazing. Yeah. So, before we go into it, what drink are you drinking?
Literally. Okay, yes, do that one. My drink, because I'm not feeling too well. I've been drinking Lemsip and vitamin C. A vitamin C drink. That's what I'm drinking, because I'm trying to fight a cold.
Cool. Well, it does the job. It does. And I'm drinking a glass of water.
Oh, great. Hydrate. You gotta hydrate.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Just to begin with, I always like to take it back, just to set a bit of a foundation. So just to start off with, could you just talk about, where you grew up and what your upbringing was like?
Okay. I grew up in North London. So I was born in Whittington Hospital, so Archways, where I'm from. Grew up in North London. It was actually quite funny. There's a funny story. My neighbor was Sade, the singer, back in the 80s. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite singers.
Yes. And she used to really like me as a baby. And and stuff like that, and was friendly with my mum, and so we kind of grew up in that kind of community. So Archway moved to Highbury in Islington, so that's where Sade used to live back in the 80s. And so yeah, grew up in North London. Both my parents are from Zimbabwe, and they came to the UK in the 70s. And so although I'm British born, when people ask me where I'm from, I say Zimbabwe, just from my heritage and how I grew up. That was always immersed in our house at home, in our household at home. And yeah, I grew up in North London, and then we moved to Essex. I was about, I think maybe sort of like 6 or 7, and mum and dad moved us to Essex. And so I grew up, spent most of my childhood there, like my secondary school years. As an Essex girl, I went to a convent school. It was called Grace Convent School. And my background was very typical, stereotypical African upbringing. 3 options: doctor, lawyer, accountant. Pick one. I picked medicine. So I studied the sciences. And, after I went through secondary school in sixth form, studying the sciences, thinking that, I was going to become a doctor one day. So that was kind of my background.
It's very interesting that pick one, 3 options. That's typical I hear from a lot of
typical
people.
African. Yeah, pick one.
Literally, it was same here. It was like medicine, law. Which one do you want to go? Which one do you want to do? I thought
exactly. You only got 2. So
you had a bit more options than I did.
Exactly.
I thought I was going to be a doctor for a large portion of my youth, and then left it behind.
Same here. Exactly.
Yeah. What was school like for you?
School was interesting. I went to, when we moved to Essex, I was about like 7. And obviously growing up very early, like my early years within North London, that's very multicultural. Moved to Essex, very predominantly white working class. So we lived in Chadwell Heath, which is like near Dagenham. So, bottom line, it was racist environment. And that was kind of my first instance of going to school and like white boys saying that I was ugly. I remember when I was in North London, I had like a boyfriend at the time. I was a very young child, but I remember I had a boyfriend, and his name was Adam. And there was this Chinese boy, and that was just normal for me. It was multicultural, and there was no kind of lines. But then going to Dagenham, Essex, it was very racist. And I think at school, I kind of realized, wow, like I felt for the first time that, the white guy, when we would play kiss chase, for example, my white school friends, the guys, didn't want to kiss me because I was dirty or ugly. So it was a lot of racism growing up as well. And then we moved for secondary school into like deeper Essex. So I lived in Grays, but I went to a girls' school. So I went to a convent school, a Catholic school, and that was quite strict. But it was a really great environment, I'd have to say. So growing up and I lived in a place, a village called South Ockingdon, but my school was in an Essex place called Grays, like where Russell Brand is from, one of our famous exports. And that was interesting because, it was a very strict school taught by nuns, but it was really set a good foundation. It was really great. I enjoyed that part of secondary school.
What's interesting about your upbringing there is when you talk about, so you first grew up in North London, multicultural, and then you've moved out a bit by bit into Essex and deeper Essex. And then when you went to Chadwell Heath, you said it was less multicultural. And that's what's interesting about that, is because now with Girls Talk London, we're going to get into that in a bit, but then that's about increasing diversity,
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's important to you because of your experiences as a child?
Maybe subconsciously, maybe. Yeah, I think maybe through my experiences, I guess experiencing racism so early on, maybe I've always had that in the back of my mind that was not right. And, especially from, being 3, 4 and years old, and you have those nursery school, primary school boyfriends and girlfriends in North London. It was very multicultural. So maybe it was just something that I thought, that's just not fair. Maybe.
Yeah. It's just a very interesting distinction, I guess, to draw. And I feel that anyway, the subconscious guides us in such a way that it isn't always very easy to recognize it. You might like look back and be like, oh yeah, I've gone through this, I've gone through that. Maybe that's why I think like that. And it's like, you don't always really clock. But where we are, because of it's a sum of like everything that's happened to us, and our mind and our subconscious shapes us and directs us and guides us, and all of the experiences play into it. I feel,
agree.
anyways, to some
No, I
degree.
agree. I agree. Everything that you've experienced and go through, it leads you to where you are today. So I do agree with that.
Yeah, for real, for real. All right, so let's talk university. Yeah, so you've gone uni. You thought you was going to be a doctor. You've gone to study. Well, you studied biomed, didn't you? I think I saw.
Yes. So I studied biomedical science. I went to Brunel University and thought after my undergrad I was going to do postgrad medicine, and that was all lined up. And then I just really discovered during university that I was more entrepreneurial, and I just didn't want to spend my days in the lab, in the hospital. It just really wasn't for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a similar distinction that happened with me as well. I didn't get to as far as university. To be honest, I didn't get the grades. So
Oh, bless you. So what
otherwise,
did you do?
I might be a doctor now if I did get the grades, but I didn't.
Yes.
No, I ended up doing mathematical science, and then it's my background's so weird. I done mathematical science for 1 year, and then left, and then I studied fashion business. So I got like a very, very background, and now I'm working in finance.
Okay.
So I've
So
been.
you really went far out then.
Yeah, I was a little rebel in it, So I said, "Nah, mum, dad, I'm not going to
I
be a
love
doctor. I'm going to go
that.
and do fashion instead." So
I love. Oh my gosh! I wonder what I would love to be a fly on the wall of that conversation.
I've had many, very, very tense conversations. Oh man,
I can imagine. I can imagine.
but we're here now, so it's all worked out in the end.
Oh yeah.
But so
Exactly.
you said in university you discovered that you were more entrepreneurial. Was there like some
Yes.
sort of experience that happened, or was it just like over time over time you just decided or come to a realization, okay, actually I'm more entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I think it was at university where I really discovered that that's where my skills align. So when I went to Brunel University, I don't know what it was about my year group, but loads of people had started their own social enterprises and businesses. So a lot of my friends now are very successful entrepreneurs or very influential in business. And so I was kind of in my first and second year, and some of my friends were starting companies, hair brands, beauty brands, so many different businesses, and I just got the bug for it. So I remember my first business was a party planning business. It's quite funny because I like to organize events, and this is what Girls London do. But I had a party planning business, so I would go out and promote my own parties, and I'd be the only female like handing out flyers after all the raves, which is quite interesting in a male dominated like environment. And then that's when I started my first social enterprise called the Rafiki Network. So I was just around that environment where people were just all about making a difference, making things happen, and there was no limits, and it just felt tangible for me. And so that's kind of where I actually realized, I think for me, I knew medicine wasn't for me. I knew that I wanted to eventually be an entrepreneur. And that's where, I got the kind of bug for it.
Sort of like being around that entrepreneurial energy, and then
Yeah,
it seeped into you in a
exactly.
way over
Yeah,
time.
definitely. Yeah.
With the Rafiki Network, so that was about combating knife crime. Yeah. So what was the
Yeah.
motivation behind starting that at the time?
So I started the Rafiki Network. It was 2007. And it was that time when literally every week there was a young person that in London, if you would turn on the news, every week there was a young Black person that was killed by gun and knife crime. And I just remember having a conversation again with my friends at university about this. And then we were all very solution focused, and we're thinking, what can we do? And I was saying, if these young people had mentors, I bet they wouldn't go down this path. And that's what sparked the idea. And so that's when I met Natalie, who's become, one of my best friends. She was working for a charity called, I think it was Make Your Mark. And she was like, you know what, you should actually apply for some funding if you want to do your mentoring program. And then I applied for some funding, and then decided to pilot a mentoring program where my friends and I at university would go to a school, Battersea Park School, about every couple of weeks, and we would go and we would mentor young students in year 10 with the idea to help them think about careers, upskill them so that they would be more focused on their education. And that's kind of, for me, where I saw actually how an idea plus action equals impact. And I just got the bug and I thought, this is really great. This is definitely what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes to knife crime, I suppose, I mean, in my opinion anyway, knife crime is a very multifaceted problem anyways. It's not like something with a one single answer. However, in your experience, what would you say are some of that, maybe the main kind of contributing factors that lead to that sort of thing?
We kind of touched on it at the beginning of the podcast around your experiences and subconsciously how they can impact where you are. And if you're not in a good environment, so it really starts with at home and your surroundings. So if you have got maybe an unstable home, you're surrounded by gangs, violence, intimidation, there's no role models, you don't know what you can be, you're limited by sort of what you see in your environment. And that's really what I saw and what was the cause. It's kind of the way of life. Some of these young people, this is the only way of life that they know. It's about survival. They don't have a benefit of dreaming, of having goals, having visions for themselves, because the way that they are, the environment that they're in, it's about surviving day to day. And even when we think about how the world is now, um high cost of living has gone up, you know what I mean? And then the wages haven't. And if you're seeing this struggle, that's kind of all you know. And that's kind of why we find that instances of knife crime are in areas of high deprivation as well. So it kind of all links.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. And it's funny when we talk about crime. One thing I don't like, anyway, is when the media that uses the term the black on black crime term, which I'm not a massive fan of, because it sort of then denotes that one of the contributing factors behind it is the fact that they're black, and that's not the case. When you talk about it, it's like when you're in areas that are poorer, like you said, when there's less money, then there's more crime, and that's true around the whole world. Literally, like Akala talks about it quite a bit. I'll be paraphrasing. I might be even getting it slightly wrong, but he says like London is, and again, I don't know what year this is from. I don't know if it's like still true right now, but like London is only like number 3 or number 4 when it comes to like knife crime in the UK. You've got Glasgow and Liverpool and areas like that, which are worse.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're black. Like in Glasgow, it's not like because they're black.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's true. I've heard him say this the same thing, but it's a narrative that I guess the government want us to go along with. Government and the media and wider society want us to think that it's a black on black crime problem rather than society and sort of social economics. What it is. Yeah,
that's literally what it is. Social economics, and it's interesting as well when you talk about that survival mindset, because where I grew up as well, there's a lot of crime as well in East London. And when I grew up around a lot of people that are involved in all sorts of stuff like that, and when you talk to them, it's like their mindset is literally of the belief where they literally cannot see outside of this environment. So it's like you say, why don't you go and do this? How? I can't. They literally cannot see.
And they don't see anyone like them from their areas who's gone and done that. So again, it's the role models. It's like you're trying to say to people, do you know what? You can get an education, you can start your own business. And they're like, well, who from here has done that? So yeah, you're right.
That's really cool. Yeah, lack of role models. And it's really cool as well when you talk about, which we're going to get into again, I keep alluding to it, but if girls talk London.
Yeah.
So like, for example, when you go into like industries where there isn't as diverse, and then let's say, for example, I go into industry where there isn't a lot of black people, and I look up and then I'm just seeing like white middle-aged men above me. People might internalize that and be like, oh, well, okay, there's no way for me to get out. It's like a lack of a role model in that kind of a position that you can parallel that to people who are growing up in these high crime areas. It's a lack of role models, which is why they can't see past the current situation. And it's not good, very multifaceted problem that I think is very simple to solve, but a lot of that can be done for sure. So let's go into your career now. So after university, you worked in the city for a bit, worked with a few different corporations and whatnot. Now, one common theme that I've heard from a lot of people I've spoken to for this podcast, and just very generally speaking from life, and that is that is about the lack of diversity across all sorts of different industries. So in your case with Girls Talk London, it'll be like lack of female representation across maybe some key industries or whatnot, and then just generally speaking, lack of not enough Black people in certain areas, or ethnic, just other ethnic groups are literally in industries and in senior positions and that kind of thing. But that's like, it's something that we all know, I guess, that there's lack of diversity. And I also want to talk about inclusion as well. So we know that there's a lack of diversity. And we also know that in a lot of industries that the attrition rate with Black employees is a lot higher. Black employees are leaving a lot more quickly. And then I believe personally, it's probably down to a lack of inclusion, not feeling included.
Yeah, you're right. That's what the data says.
Yeah. So in that sense, so what when you was working in city, did you feel that lack of inclusion? And just can you define what inclusion means to you?
Yeah, I definitely did. I didn't feel included when I worked in the city. So when I worked in the city, I didn't actually work in diversity and in inclusion until very later on. So I worked I can't really say the name. I don't want to say the name, but I worked for an international bank at the time, UK, very big in the UK. And I worked in their group events and internal communications team. And then I went for another large international bank, which has a big presence in Hong Kong. And I worked in their HR department. And then it was only when I worked for an American investment bank, and I just stumbled upon this department, which was called corporate responsibility. And that was like my first time really seeing like HR and D&I. So through my career working at group events, group communications, I just always felt like there was no senior Black people. I just felt like I was just always going to be at the bottom of the barrel. I felt like my colleagues would make fun of me when I would come with different wigs, just how I was, you know what I mean? Just how I kind of appeared. You just always felt like you were the odd one out. And I never even had like, like Black female peers that I could really talk to. So, and you only would see like the Black staff would be like the PAs or assistants, and never a Black person that was in a senior role. And so I didn't feel included. I just felt like I was just like anything, which is why I kind of leaned a bit more to my entrepreneurial side. I would say that for me, inclusion is really feeling like you belong, feeling like you have a say, feeling like you are part of something. That's what inclusion means to me. And I mean, there's so many definitions, but for me, that's what inclusion means. It means feeling like I belong, feeling like I have a place, feeling like I have a voice, feeling like people and the environment I am in care about me, that they care about my well-being, that I matter. That's what inclusion means to me.
Yeah. And in your experience, working through the city and also working with Girls Talk London, what are some of the key points that you, when it comes to feeling that lack of inclusion, are you hearing that from a lot of other women that you're working with? And what are some of their sort of key sticking points when it comes to that as well?
I mean, I guess it's very, I guess it's quite similar across the board. So the experiences that we hear from our community are quite similar to what is reported. So it's in terms of some of the barriers that they face, it's one around a mixture of diversity and inclusion. So, for example, the lack of women in senior positions means that the culture is not necessarily catered towards women working in a thriving environment. So if we looked at the pandemic, the data was showing that women were still doing, even women who are married with husbands, everybody's in a pandemic. The women were still doing a majority of the house care, childcare. So it's around those barriers in terms of the gender roles. And there's also research. So I worked with the Female Lead. They are another female empowerment charity, and I was part of their advisory board. And they had a big report about women in the workplace, and they found that actually women in the data, they are even more so ambitious But it's just the workplace that is not, accommodating their ambitions. So it's a bit again around the stereotypes. It's again because a lot of women at home, they're bearing the brunt of childcare in the pandemic. It's around the visibility. Now we're coming out of it. They've got this kind of presenteeism bias where women might want to now opt more to work at home because of the childcare responsibilities, but yet they're not being as visible. So you don't have that going to after work drinks, or being able to engage with senior stakeholders in person. So they're being sort of left out, during the pandemic and now post pandemic. So now the challenge is, how do women balance hybrid work and still think about ways that they can still progress? And so I think that's a bit more of the diversity and inclusion piece, that leadership are still not considering all of the barriers. And I think also it's around just men stepping up. And it's men in the workplace actually thinking, if you have a child with someone, it's got to start with you. Is the childcare 50-50? Are you helping to clean up the house? How are you helping the mother of your child's career thrive? I think it's a lot of work to be done around how men can support the mothers of their kids, because the data shows women are still doing majority of the childcare, and they're not making babies on their own, is what I'll say. So it's a lot of barriers. So I think there's been a lot of stuff that I'm going to be doing around working parents as well, with our organization as well.
Yeah, I suppose it kind of boils down to, in a way, like a culture shift then,
Yeah.
Because when you talk about the going out for, you said after work drinks, I thought of your
It's my
podcast.
podcast. Yeah.
After work drinks club. Check it out if you haven't checked
Yeah.
it out, people. Good
Yes.
podcast.
Thank you.
But yeah, when you talk about that, like, because I've got a friend, well, he's a guy, I got a friend, yeah, but he was like, when it came to work, he got a lot of his promotions just through going out to drinks after work, literally.
Yeah, it is. It
And
is. It's all about those, and and it's give and take, right? Sometimes we have to be real. Life is life. So, if you can, face to face is always better than virtual. Let's not lie to ourselves and think, oh, you can develop really good, rapport. There's just some things that can't be done virtually, right? But I think it's just thinking really consciously and making an effort that it doesn't sort of really go down the wayside, and everybody has the chance to have that face-to-face engagement. That's kind of, I think, what we need to sort of look at as well.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree. And
Yeah.
also people who aren't, who might need more flexible working, like you're saying, if it's a working mother, or just anyone that has any kind of issue that they may need to work a bit more flexibly,
Yeah.
not forgetting that they exist, keeping in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form, having them on the same sort of a level playing field as everybody's in the office. Because people that are in the
Mhm.
office are getting more visibility, maybe more face time with management and that kind of thing. Which, when
Mhm.
it comes to talent discussions or wage rise or whatever,
Exactly.
tip
People are not even in the conversations. Exactly.
literally,
Yeah.
literally, which isn't really
Yeah.
fair if people got other things that means they have to work a bit more flexibly. So yeah,
Exactly.
definitely things that needs to be raised. Awareness needs to be raised on it. So, and from there, let's go into Girls Talk London. So
Mhm.
I've alluded to it a couple of times. Love the work you do with Girls Talk London. So
Thank
sick.
you.
I think definitely something that's needed. And yeah, so let's just go Girls Talk London. Yeah. So you founded Girls Talk London whilst you were still working when you're still working and you're balancing both, I suppose, for a period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, could you just let us know what Girls Talk London is, and then what your motivation was for founding it at the time?
Yeah. So at Girls Talk London, what we do is we do a couple of things. I think we've kind of got two, I guess, faces. So we work a lot with corporate. So we partner with global businesses. So some of our clients are Meta, Snapchat, Vodafone. HSBC is one of our clients. We work a lot with a lot of the companies in tech and the financial services, and we partner with them to help democratize access to jobs and opportunities for female and Black female talent. So we connect them with our talent community and our global community of women. So we kind of, in terms of how we work with women, we've built a global community of women in 37 countries, and we connect them to the businesses who we're working with to help them, increase their diversity, but also get the women get jobs, internships, through our partnerships. And then we also produce online content. So we have a blog, we have a talk show, we do events. So we have the largest global career summit for Black women in tech called the Black Girls Tech Summit. It's in its 4th year. And we also deliver a lot of programs, so talent accelerator programs for women and consultancy and lots of other things. So we're all around, getting women into senior positions, into male-dominated sectors, and just helping them to level up in their careers as well. That's what we do.
That's cool. And at that moment in time you founded it, I believe it was 2013 you founded it, right?
Yeah.
So at that moment in time when you founded it, what was the motivation behind starting it there and then?
So when I started Girls Talk London, it was at that time when, so in terms of externally why I knew there was a need, there was the Lord Davis report, and it showed that I think women made up just 12.5% of all roles on the FTSE 100 executive boards. So only 12.5% of women were at board level in the top 100 companies in the UK, but yet we make up just under 50% of the workforce. So it was just really terrible. And then I was doing a lot of work with young people in diversity and inclusion and trying to get encourage them to get jobs in the financial services. And I just noticed a lot of women were opting out of those careers and saying, I don't really see a place for myself in the city. And so I kind of, firsthand saw that there was a problem. Young girls were not aspiring for careers in the financial services and in tech. So I thought, what, something needs to be done about that. But also the data is showing that that's true, because no wonder they don't feel that there's a place for them. There's no women who are leading these companies. At that time, I think there were only like 6 female CEOs of the top 100 companies in the UK. I don't believe that's increased much. It kind of fluctuates between 6 and 7. So, that was really my motivation for starting that. I wanted to give young women accessible role models, but I also wanted to help women progress in their careers as well.
That's really cool. And when you said the 6, well, between 6 and 7 CEOs, I knew there was a lack of diversity. I didn't know it was that much. That sounds nuts, to be honest.
Yeah, of the FTSE 100. Yeah, there's more men named John than with female CEOs.
That's proper nuts. That's crazy. Because what I always say as well is that organizations should at the very least be indicative of what the population, like the demographics of the population. You know what I'm saying?
It should be 47 at least, between 47 to 49. FTSE 100 CEO should be female.
Yeah. So
that's just the bottom line. Yeah.
And if all things were equal, like law of averages, whatever, all things were equal, then it would be. But then if it's not, then something has happened. I don't know, like could be culture, could be this, could be that, whatever. But something has happened. And obviously, like you said, massive lack of role models. And you can even caveat that back to when we're talking about the NAF camera and everything like that. Massive lack of role models, And I think it's very important to have those like visible role models in those places you can look up and be like, oh wow, like she's done it or he's done it or whatever.
Exactly.
So I can do it as well.
Agree.
Yeah, for real, definitely. When you first started, Girls Talk London, what did it look like?
I started doing quarterly meetups. So I remember the first event we did, it was snowing, and I had to literally beg I had some senior women come and talk to young girls at secondary school, and it was a snowy day, the trains were cancelling, buses weren't running, and it was just like a complete nightmare, but we managed to make it work. So it was very humble beginnings. We bought biscuits from Waitrose and like drinks from Waitrose, and and it was just really like basic, and then it just grew. So we just started out as a small community coming together in London, and senior women would tell their stories, their career journeys to younger women. And then it just grew from there, but very, a small meetups, and then, to the work we do now.
Yeah. And then now you've got a lot of corporate partners and that sort of thing. When did you start reaching out to corporate partners, and how did you go about building those relationships?
Interestingly, I can't remember how. I think O2 was our first corporate partner, and I think it's because I knew a lady that had moved to O2, so through my own personal networks. And then O2 were saying, actually, we're struggling a lot with getting women into these jobs. Can you help us? And then they were like, actually, we have been speaking to our contacts and counterparts at Ericsson, at BT, and Vodafone. Can you help all of us? So I was actually approached to come up with a plan to help them increase the number of women. So I was very fortunate that I was actually approached. And then we piloted our first program with those 4 corporates, which was called Step Into STEM. So it was a mentoring program for young women at sixth form to help them get, they got a mentor from one of the businesses, and we were wanting to basically encourage them to study STEM subjects. And then through that, it's just really been part of my network. So just networking, meeting contacts, doing great work, then caught the eyes of other sort of other corporates. But again, I'd kind of meet somebody. So I met a lady at Facebook, for example, at an event that Facebook were hosting, and I was telling her about what I was doing. And I said, look, would you host Black Girls Tech Summit? And they said yes. So a lot of networking, asking corporates and reaching out to them, but also equally now we get corporates that will reach out to us and want to partner as well.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool. So I guess at first it was sort of organic, just based on providing some level of value, and from there
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just sort of grew organically over time as well.
Yeah.
All been
Yeah.
organic, actually, basically, in short.
Yeah.
And you touched upon the Step Into STEM, which I read about on the website, which I thought was so cool. Can you
Thank
talk
you.
talk a bit more? Sorry, a bit more about that
Mm.
program and what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, we don't run it anymore. We've got a new program now called Step Up, but Step Into STEM, we ran that program for 5 years, and we worked with nearly 200 girls who are in sixth form in London, Birmingham, and Leeds. They got a mentor from one of the 4 sponsors. So the sponsors were BT, Vodafone, Ericsson, and O2. And it was a 7-month program. So the girls would meet with their mentor once a month. And then we would host a 2-day career summit for them to meet the recruitment team, senior leaders, and then we'd have a really big graduation. And through that, we won a European Diversity Award for Best Community Project. And then, 80%, probably more so now, are studying STEM subjects. And actually now we've got some of our alumni who are actually working now at these businesses. So it's really had an impact. They're now actually, they've got jobs there at the sponsors. So it's had a really big impact.
That's really cool. And then you said you got the Step Up as well now. Then, so is it very similar in what it does?
Yeah. So Step Up it just started in this January. It's a talent accelerator, but it's for female university students or those who identify as female at university, and it's running in Ghana and the UK. Quite similar, but it's more so around giving women that step up into jobs. So it's around they get mentoring, they get master classes, we have a career summit for them, and then we do a lot of coaching with them in terms of interviews and application. And the idea is we want them at the end of this program to be ready to enter a job in tech or a job with our sponsors. So the sponsors of this program are HSBC UK, BT again, Vodafone, and Virgin Media O2. So it's been really great to actually, I've been working with like Vodafone, BT, and Virgin Media O2, especially the contacts there, for now maybe sort of 6 years, 7 years. So it's been just great to kind of continue that relationship with them as well. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. And I want to talk about balance. Yeah. So you were working in the city when you first founded Girls Talk London. And
Yeah.
I work in the city now. And I know it's like it's tough. The job in of itself is tough. And then to do that and to work on something entrepreneurial on the side. And I would assume as well, it's not even necessarily like on the side. It's kind of all consuming as well. When you're putting on big events and everything, it's on your mind 24/7. How did you balance the two, like your career and Girls Tour London?
Poorly. It wasn't. I can't lie. My health did suffer a lot, and mental health. You do struggle because it is tiring, and so I left my full-time job last year, to really focus on Girls Talk full time. So I had to make that decision because we were just growing. And also, just certain environments, I just can't really say too much about it, but I just think certain cultures, it just really wasn't necessarily conducive to me being able to have my side hustle happily and being in certain corporate cultures for me. It just didn't really work. So I'm a big advocate of side hustles. I think you should definitely have a side hustle for as long as possible, because 2 incomes are better than one. But I think I just got to that stage where I just felt that I wasn't necessarily in an environment that was supportive of me as an individual. And also, I just thought to myself, do you know what? There's something here. Our business was growing at a really big rate that I couldn't do both things at the same time. And so I just had to take that leap of faith and just say, let me just focus 1,000% on Girls Talk London. I'm going hard, or I'm gonna go home. And so that's kind of where I was.
Yeah. All right. Now let's see, if somebody wanted to get into one of these FTSE 100 companies, what's the best way to go about it?
Oh, it's where do I start? I mean, you you have to do a number of things. It's not like, okay, just do this and then you'll get a job in the FTSE 100 companies. You really have to have this, you have to be strategic. So if you want to have a job with a big corporate, you have to be strategic, and you have to think about, you have to have a plan for how you're going to go about it. You can't just think, oh yeah, I'm just going to try and apply for like loads of jobs and get it. So you have to kind of do an almost a career audit of yourself, your CV, your strengths, your weaknesses, and think about how you can really sort of make your experience attractive to what, to an employer and what they look for. So I think it's important to continuously upskill yourself, to invest in your self-development. You also have to utilize platforms like LinkedIn, because a lot of recruiters from a FTSE 100 companies, they are literally on LinkedIn looking for talent. So you have to make sure your personal branding is on point, that you make yourself look like an expert in your field. You have to make a lot of effort. People who are not on LinkedIn, you're not serious. In my opinion, I always tell my network this: you have to get on LinkedIn if you want a job at a FTSE 100 company. And then thinking about constantly evolving your skills. So the skills that employers look for, in the skills that these companies need, are always changing. So you have to really constantly think about, what skills can I develop, what skills will an employer need, and then how can you demonstrate that. So those are kind of some of the things, like, people need to do. And then you also kind of have to think about having mentoring, coaching, getting a sponsor, thinking about how you can get more visibility as well. So not just doing the work. You're not going to really get your next gig by just keeping your head down and doing the work. It doesn't really work like that. You have to think about, how can I get more visibility and put myself out there? So there's so many different things that you can do to get more visibility, like with senior people and also externally, so that corporates will end up trying to headhunt you as well. So things like getting a board, like sitting on a board, it could be for like a charity or a non-profit, is good for your exposure. And just thinking about ways to constantly evolve and develop yourself and make yourself stand out is really key.
That's really cool. And I like when you said about just putting your head down and doing the work doesn't always necessarily work, because it reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend recently. So he's like a Python coder or something like that, and he was like how he spent so long writing the best ever code, and didn't really shout about it, didn't tell he'd done the work, and then someone else came and just appropriated his and created like a substandard version of what he wrote, and they got promotion of his work
Wow.
basically.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
he was like, what he was saying to me was that black people were too humble. We need to let them know I've done this work. Let them know, put it in their face.
Yeah, you do. We have to speak up. We have to. A lot of some people think, oh, I don't want to be too flash. I don't want to be too arrogant. Well, you ain't gonna get nowhere. So you have to speak up and tell people what about what you're working and what you're doing. That's just part of life. People who are successful don't become successful by just putting their head down and doing the work. That's just not, it doesn't work like that. You've got to apply all the other things as well.
Yeah. Closed mouths don't get fed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right. So let's talk let's talk the Black Lives Matter movement. Yeah. So another common theme that I've picked up from a lot of people I've spoken to was that after the Black Lives Matter has been happening for a long time, but when the movement gained a lot of traction after the George Floyd murder, a lot of people had a lot of people reaching out to them, and all of that kind of thing, which has sort of waned off over time. I know you've got your Black Girls Tech Summit, you work with women and Black women, everything like that. I'm wondering what your experience has been in that regard? Like, did you get a lot of attention during that period, and has that been sustained with like the corporates you work with?
Yes and no. I mean, I think because my background, I was a D&I professional, so I was in-house. So there was a lot of pressure in terms of us as D&I practitioners to address this issue. So there was a lot of interest at senior level, executive level, around, oh my gosh, what's the data? How many Black employees do we have? We need to do something. So there was definitely that resurgence of pressure. Whereas when you would try and talk to people, senior leaders around race and ethnicity, they were kind of like, oh, we just want to focus on gender right now. After the Black Lives Matter movement, that's when it was like they were coming to you now and saying, what are we doing about race? I think it was definitely at the forefront of people's minds. However, I think I wouldn't say the floodgates open and everyone's like, rushing, but slowly but surely we were seeing it wasn't as hard to sell why we did Black Girls Tech Summit. Because I have to remind people, we started this in 2019. So we had seen very early on, before, a year before George Floyd's murder, sadly, that this was an issue. So we had to do a bit more pushing and fighting for companies to sponsor. Whereas now, when we're approaching corporates, they get it, if that makes sense. But I wouldn't say they're kind of still rushing and it's uncontrollable demand. The barriers are still there. I don't want anyone to get it twisted and think, oh yeah, now everything's changed. It's not changed that much, to be honest. Yeah.
Do you feel like these corporates are doing enough to promote, like, you've been working in diversity and inclusion for a while now, and then as a professional and also with your business as well, in your experience, just looking back and from then until now, do you feel like corporates are doing enough to promote diversity and inclusion?
If they were, you wouldn't have the issue. So there's your answer. The data says otherwise. Not me.
The
data says otherwise. Yeah.
Oh, it's true. The proof is in the pudding. So
yeah.
Cool. Makes sense. All right. Let's reflect back on your journey. Yeah. Looking back through your journey, whether professionally or personally, what would you say has been your highest high and your lowest low?
Oh, it's a tough one. I think my highest high, there's not one moment. I think my highest high has always been my business. So whether we've got a new corporate partner, we're now growing our team, we're expanding into West Africa and other places. I think my highest high has always been my business. I can't pick one. It's just that's been the highest high, like seeing my business grow, like Girls Talk London, and develop. I think my lowest low. I think I would say, like, there was a time when I did Girls Talk full time for like 2 years, from 2015 to 2017. It wasn't really like my choice. I was kind of like working part time, and then I moved to Ghana to be with my partner at the time, and that was like a real low. I think it was because I battled with a lot of imposter syndrome. I didn't have a lot of confidence. I was also very young. I just didn't know what I was doing. And so that was a real low for me. So I kind of took a step back, came back to the UK, went back to working, and then just slowly built myself up again and built my business back up. So I would say, interestingly, yeah, I would say that was like my lowest low. But I learned a lot from that in terms of the mistakes I made. Now that I've kind of really decided, right, I'm doing this full-time entrepreneurship thing now, because of the mistakes I made in my lowest lows, I'm now more seasoned and I feel more confident in what I'm doing. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
So do you feel like you've overcome the imposter syndrome now?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. 1,000%. Yeah. So I feel like, I don't have any doubt about my abilities. I just, I've come a long way since then. Yeah.
That's good to hear. All right. What would you say has been your proudest achievement so far?
I'm trying to have a look, because I've got some pictures as well of some of them in my room.
Yeah.
I would say, I would say this was quite a big deal. So like, I was in the Financial Times. I was on the Future Ethnic Minority Leaders list. I was like top 30. I think I was like number 22 in the UK, Europe, Canada, and US. And it was published in the Financial Times. And my dad was like really, really proud. And like my cousins were like, oh my God, you're in the Financial Times. Like, this is major. So I think that would be like one of my highs, like being in that list. That was pretty cool.
That's
It was
very,
a few
very
years
cool.
ago. Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And last question before we go into some quick fire, which I
Okay.
always like to end with this question. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Ah, I think my legacy is Girls Talk London. I think everything that I'm building, this is my legacy, really. So I want my legacy to be Girls Talk London. I'm purposely driving the business, so eventually I can leave it, and somebody else can run it, and somebody else can run that. I'm not building it to be a lifestyle business for me. I'm building it because I want it to have a legacy beyond me. So that's how I'm kind of, and that's in the way that I'm coaching my staff and developing my staff and always thinking about who can my successor be, because that's what I want my legacy to be. Girls Talk London.
I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's like having that succession plan because you really believe in what it's about. It's not like I'm here
Yes.
to get the bag right now and then cool, then that's it. Like it's
Exactly.
keeping it here and having that succession because it's going to benefit generations to come. So
Exactly.
love
Yeah.
that. All right,
Thank you.
let's go in some quick fire questions. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've got 10 questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got them up. 10 questions. Yeah.
Okay.
How are you with quick fire questions?
I like them.
Cool. All right, cool.
I'm ready.
I hope you like my ones. So,
All right, go on.
let's go. All right, first question. What's your favorite movie?
Oh my gosh, I'm bad at these. Quick fire. Favorite movie has to be Waiting to Exhale. Love it. I know it
Okay,
off by heart. Yeah.
great. All right, next. What's your favorite book?
Oh my gosh. Oprah Winfrey, What I Know for Sure. That's my favorite book. Yeah.
Great. Third, name a song that you can never get bored of.
Oh my God. Anything Beyonce, Formation.
Great. All right. If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would you pick?
Mashed potato.
Oh,
That's
interesting
it.
choice.
Mashed potato. I
just
love mashed
potato?
potato
No
and
gravy.
ribs. And ribs. Yeah. Ribs and mashed potato I could eat every day
Nice.
for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Nice. All right, next. How do you start your day?
I have a very strict morning routine. I always start it with gospel music. I always light my candles, and I'm always reading my prayer journals and journaling, and coffee. Always have to have a coffee.
Great. Next, name 3 people that inspire you.
Oh, Oprah Winfrey, Steve Harvey, and my mum.
Great. What's the best advice you've ever received?
From my cousin Ralph. So he told me when I was whinging one time about how I'm just not where I want to be and I want to be a boss. And he was like, Vanessa, like, and I think I was like 25, 26. And he was like, and he's basically the CEO of basically Africa's largest telco company. And he was like, but at the time he was a CEO of a very large investment bank, the Africa region. And he was like, look, Vanessa, you are never going to be me right now. He was like, you're never going to be me. So stop trying to. And he was like, not because you haven't got the skills. Certain things are about experience, and you have to go for a certain experience. Your career is a marathon, it is a journey. And that he was so right, because as I mentioned, everything that I've gone through, now I am a CEO. I'm thriving because I've taken my time to go through experiences. If I was a CEO back there when he was talking to me, I would have failed. So that was the best piece of advice. It let me just stop putting pressure on myself.
It's that tough love from family. Gotta love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Next, if you were to dedicate the rest of your life to a charitable cause, what would you pick?
Something to do with race and women. Yeah.
All right. Next one. What's the kindest thing that someone has ever done for you?
Ooh. The kindest thing someone's ever done for me. That's a tough one. Pray for me. Yeah.
Great. And last question. What's one thing people don't know about you?
Oh my gosh. Oh, your questions are so funny. What's the one thing people don't know that I am, and I kind of share this a little bit on my Instagram, but they don't necessarily know. Like, I have a very kind of like ratchet kind of truck driver side. So there's a kind of corporate Vanessa, but in my house, there's a completely different like Vanessa. Yeah. So
Cool.
I kind of like everything ratchet. Yeah, I'm quite a very ratchet person at home. So what's something you
Cool.
wouldn't know? Yeah.
That's great. Great to hear. All right. That's that. 1,000 voices wrapped up. Before
Oh,
we
thank
wrap up
you.
properly, have you got any closing remarks? And also, where can people find you if they want to find you?
Yeah, I mean, they can follow. It's at Vanessa Sanyauke on most platforms. Also at Girls Talk London. We're on all social media platforms as well. And they can find out about our work. It's girlstalklondon.com. And yeah, I love what you're doing. So I'm just can't wait to see. You've got a big task, but I'm sure you can do it. 1,000 Black voices. Here we come. So I think it's really
Mhm.
great what you're doing. So just all the best. And I'm looking forward to tuning in and listening to all of these incredible stories.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really enjoyed
Yeah,
having you on here today, Vanessa. Like, really,
it
really
was
good. Like,
fun.
loved hearing about your journey, hearing about your lessons learned, everything you've gone through. It's been super
Mhm.
good. And I'm sure people are going to find it super inspiring as well. So,
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
once again. Really appreciate it. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's that for today. So, thank you for tuning in. This is 1,000 Voices. That was Vanessa Sanyauke, and we're out. Okay, that was that. As always, thank you for tuning in. It is very much appreciated. And if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to us or following us wherever you're listening to this right now. It really does help us in trying to amplify the voices of the people that we speak to. Also, what did you think about this episode? What did you gain from this episode? What were some of your key takeaways from this conversation? As always, it's always great to hear from you guys. So leave a comment, leave a review wherever you're listening to this right now. Let us know what you thought about this. The next podcast episode is going to be dropping next week, Tuesday, as they release every single Tuesday. So if you'd like to see some previews, a few little snippets from that, then follow us on our social media pages at 1000 Voices UK so that you can keep up to date with that before it comes out. The full YouTube video will drop a few days afterwards as well. So keep an eye out for that. But that's that for now. Thank you for tuning in. This is 1000 Voices. And for now, people, we're out.